Welcome back, everyone, to another wonderful FreightWaves event here, virtual event, of course. Today, I'm very excited because we've had our small carrier summit in the past. Now we're going to get into the realm of enterprise trucking in particular and discussing a bunch of really interesting topics throughout the day with some incredible leaders in the space as well. And to start this event, actually, I'm really excited because we have an interesting keynote speaker who's been a part of a company, a family company as well. I think a lot of us can relate out there to this, that started small, right? And has gone into more of this enterprise realm. And that makes me excited because we're going to learn a lot of interesting ways to not only improve our business, fight through some of these more challenging times. We're also going to get a chance to talk about the future of trucking and how industry leaders are navigating through that space as well. And to start this off, happy to introduce a good friend, Harman Cheema, a CEO of Cheema FreightLines. Harman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, this is going to be very exciting, especially because, like I said, you've come from this small father-led family industry or company into what you've created today. So I would love if you could tell us a little bit about the journey of Cheema, how it started, and how you've helped to develop it to where it is today.
Yeah, so we started about 18 years ago in 2006. I was just a sophomore in high school at the time. My uncle was already in the business. He told my dad, who was leased on pulling containers out of the port of Seattle for other companies, and he told him, "Hey, just get your own authority. You can make more money. You have a truck, buy a reefer, and haul produce out of the Salinas area." And we were living in Seattle at the time, Western Washington, and you just haul produce up, and life's good. So he said, "All right, let's do it." So we came up with the name Cheema FreightLines. Cheema's our last name, and came up with the name and decided to buy a reefer. And both of them asked. My dad asked me like, "Hey, can you help book some loads?" And my uncle was like, "I'll kind of teach you how I do it, and I'll connect you with some of my broker friends that I book from." And 2006, it's not that long ago, but it's still 18 years ago. But the world has changed big time, especially in freight and the brokers and all that, right? There's a lot more of them now. The opportunities are way different than they were back then, but things were good right before the session. So bought a reefer, started booking them some loads. He only needed like 2 loads a week out of California. We just run down empty out of the Northwest, pick up a load, and paid good at the time. And I think the interest, I think what I remember was there was a lot of loads going to Canada at the time as well. So we take them to the border. And I think it's because the dollar, the Canadian dollar and the US dollar were coming together. So there was a lot more export trade as well. Um, so we just run down empty, pick up produce, and do it again twice a week. And, and I was kind of helping him. And then he'd give me the bills and I'd learn how to invoice. I actually found my old invoice dairy thing that I bought from Staples where I'd handwrite the invoice and send it into the brokers and, get paid. So that's kind of how we got started in the early days. I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And, just kind of helping them from there, the early beginnings.
Well, I'd love to hear about growing the business too. Right, early beginning. It sounds like you're a part of a lot of the operational expertise, which is I always tell people in this industry, like you provide good service. The biggest thing you should be concerned about is your right. How are you going to scale, right, to continue to give that service to others in the industry as well. So, can you tell us about a little bit of that journey of it scaling to the amount of assets that you have today and handling that with your family too?
Yeah, so early on, I realized there was an opportunity for good providers, and business was there was an opportunity for just trucking companies in general if you can service them, if you can service your customers well. So, starting sophomore in high school in 2 years in 2008, when I graduated high school, we're up to 13 trucks at that point. Had some trailers powering or doing some power only work with some larger fleets, and just kind of growing the business from there. But it was those were the good old days, right? That's how it was easy, and things were rock and rolling because communication was there. But one key thing I like to make sure I always keep in mind is just a year later after we started, the iPhone came out, and so for me that was I have the world in my hand, right? That was amazing, and that's when really I think the industry started to change because now load boards, whether it's DAT or at that time we were using getloaded.com. That was a big a load board. I don't even think they exist anymore. Or they do.
Yeah,
I haven't heard about them in a while. But
throwback, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we're on there, but then you can have get loaded and an internet truck stop on your phone, right? So if you need a load, my dad needs a load, and I can text them back and forth without having to use my little Nokia or and paying 10 cents a message. those kind of things, right? So that's kind of what I remember, like as the early days. But growing it from there, it's been 18 years has been a journey. We had a lot of growth in the last 7 to 8 years, and a lot of it was getting the company was maturing up, and I was maturing up and growing up as well at the same time. So, but it all started like my dad said, I know how to drive a truck. I will be the driver. If you can figure out the back office, go for it. And you can figure out how to run this thing, let's do it. But we had no idea we wanted to be this big or anything like that. But I love business, always been interested in it. Found a good opportunity to keep this going. And here we are today, almost 500 company trucks, some owner operators on top of that, and growing brokerage at the same time. So, and one of the craziest freight markets that I've ever experienced the last 18 years.
Yeah, same here. And it's interesting to go right. You have this trucking background, expertise in that area, but you're right. As you grow, you now have this brokerage. You have a lot of other services as well, including right the intermodal LTL. How did you go about adding those services and finding the right partners to provide that?
Yeah, so our main service is still the bread and butter, which is just, we started with a reefer, but we really just focus on dry van truckload, right? Our brokerage does some of the other modes for us. But what I like to tell other people, and kind of what I stuck with is that I try to do that Southwest model, right? The Southwest Airlines, where they try to keep one type of truck, one type of trailer, one type of mode, and they can kind of send that airplane anywhere, right? They're all 737s and send them anywhere. So I thought that was always very interesting. And so we always wanted one type of trailer, one type of truck if we could. We have a few different manufacturers that we partner with now, but it's I can send any truck pretty much anywhere, whether it's regional, long haul, local, those kind of things. So that was kind of what we wanted to do, and we stuck to that, and really just stuck in our core area. We started out as being a regional I-5 carrier, just running up and down between California, Oregon, and Washington, and did that for a long time, many years. And now we just, over the last couple of years, branched out into the mountain states. We're having Arizona, we're in Montana, we're in Utah, and some of those states, and a little bit into Dallas. But before that, we just kind of stuck to the roots, got really good at it, make sure, we know how to make money. We know how, drivers are a big deal, right? We want to make sure retention and those things happen as well. So just got good at what we do. Took a while, right? You're not good. You just practice, right? Just keep practicing. And in trucking, unfortunately, practice is, you lose a lot of money practicing too. So,
True.
so figuring that out, was definitely a challenge. But, being organized in different break points of your business at different levels, whether it's revenue or employee count or truck count, or just, straight up, just revenue, and those benchmarks are important, right? At what point, what comes in.
Yeah, it's definitely this industry is a numbers game, and watching those KPIs and numbers really pays off. And I love hearing the story of how you guys grew because, like I said, it's you have to start off as a small company before you can get to the enterprise level, and so it's nice to hear those challenges. And over the past couple of years, you brought this up as well, right? We've seen not only economic issues of today, but I mean, with your time in the industry, you've seen the ELDs and a different number of regulatory changes as well. Can you talk about how you've navigated building the company, scaling the company, but also understanding those regulatory boundaries too?
Yeah, so that obviously is learning curve as well, right? Because the beginning, the the goal was deliver the freight, deliver it, safely, and make sure our drivers are getting paid well, and make sure we get paid, and just do it all over again, right? That was the goal. And then later, it's like, okay, we're becoming a real company now. Safety is actual. It's not just a department, but it's we have to change it into a culture, right? And everybody's not always going to fit into what you're trying to do. So we had some turnover within drivers and office people as well over the years. We had to navigate that, but it's like this is where we want to go, and you want to make sure you push that culture, and you want to have like-minded people from the driving force all the way into your office speaking the same language, because that's extremely important, right? Because safety is the one thing that can make or break a trucking company, and I feel like a lot of small companies don't realize that until it's too late. Or like for us in 2012 is when we stopped, paused. We were running about, I don't know, 70 or 80 trucks, 90 trucks, something like that. We downsized a little bit, got better at those processes, and then started growing from there again. But I knew at that point, like, okay, I better get this, I better get this under control, and make sure, before we get bigger, I have it dialed in. So that's one thing that, isn't maybe as cool in the beginning as booking freight, delivering it, getting paid, and even accounting, right? That's a big thing too, right, for us. So that was one thing that came kind of later, and safety was always there. We want to be safe, right? We don't want to go out having wrecks, but it was never like a big time like program or anything, right? So we had to figure that piece out, get really good at that. And accounting was another thing, right? Making sure we're delivering all this stuff, making sure we're collecting it timely and billing it properly, and all those things were important. And having good financials, knowing how to talk to bankers, some of those things were extremely important, especially in the growth that came in over the last 10 years, right? And those are the things that most business people don't think about in the beginning. And that was something, if I ever to do it again, I would make sure I have a really good safety person, a really good CFO or an accountant right there with me from the start. And you could grow it way faster if you keep those things, right? But the main thing I want to make sure we point out is it's all a relationship business at the end of the day. The relationships get bigger and you meet a lot more people. But a lot of my growth came from, going to industry events, right? FreightWaves didn't exist at the time, but whether it was food shippers or it was other events, there's a lot more now than there were back when I got started. And I was always the youngest one. I was like 19, 20 years old going to these events, and everybody there is just, bald and gray. And just in trying to relate to people and making friends, and some of those people I've from my first conferences I'm still friends with today, which is awesome. But they've taught me a lot over the years, right? Just be a sponge. Don't know it all. Those are the big things I'd like to tell young guys that are coming in.
Well, I am going to take this moment to say I love that you brought that up too. For everyone that's watching, great reason to come to FreightWaves events in the future too. So make sure after this chat, go to live.freightwaves.com. Humble pause here to, of course, check out those events as well. And I'm happy you actually brought that up too, because I think a lot of times people wonder what the ROI of some of these events are. And that right there, I think, speaks millions for it, right? It's not where you want to be right down the line as a company. And I think 1,000% people bring up all the time, right? The people are a big part of this industry. That's where sometimes tech gets it wrong, but the people are the relationships that you build, and what that leads to the future of your business too. So happy that you brought that up. Another thing that you brought up, though, I want to ask about is the safety aspect of things. And I think in industry, especially when you're talking about just trucking in general, we're talking about heavy equipment. We're talking about high speeds with that heavy equipment on the highways. We're also talking about hours of service and making sure we're getting home on time, and balancing that right with the regulations of maybe if I just push on the gas a little bit, it'll get me there on time. I won't have to worry about some of these issues. So I know all of that's going through a driver's head throughout the day. How have you built that safety culture now to continue growing such a wonderful business? And how did you, and what were the strategies behind making sure that that safety culture stuck once you understood how important that was?
Yeah, so it's easy. When you're a 20 truck fleet, you can hire 20 great drivers that are safe. They've got experience. You don't have to worry about them. They know what they need to do, right? And they just take care of business, and things take care of themselves. Now you get to 50, it's like cool. You still got those 20 good people, but it's like, do you know the other 30? Are they all, if you get another 30, cool, maybe you got good luck. But the odds of that happening, or the next 60 or the next 100, right, are very rare. So you got to train you got to make sure you get yourself assessed to how safe you want to be and how you want to do it, right? So network is extremely important there. Um, because things aren't always going to work. There's so many obstacles in trucking every day, whether it's traffic or shipper delays or receiver delays, and things are going to keep happening. So communication with the customer is extremely important. Um, but in a tight market like today, sometimes they're like, well, this other company can deliver it on time. Why can't you, right? And a few years ago, when things were crazy, it was just like, okay, we get it, totally get it. Can you deliver it tomorrow, right? So the conversations definitely change as the seasonality changes, and it's up to the truckers to make sure our drivers are safe, they're not fatigued, and we have a network where if we have to turn loads or relay loads in between, there's another truck coming. You got to have that scale. That's really the only way, right? And the smaller carriers struggle with that because there might not be another truck coming. For us, if you look at our map on the West Coast or the Western 11 states, there's always another truck near another truck within at least an hour or less. So we have options to make things happen, right? And that's just a scale game. You got to get to that point. But the most important thing to remember about safety is this goes for most truckers. I don't care if you're one truck or thousands of trucks. At the end of the day, we're always the scariest part, not to be a downer, but we're always one wreck from losing it all potentially, right? Those nuclear verdicts are everything. So it's safety is, if you think safety is expensive, try having an accident, right? That line stuck to me at a safety conference I went to a long time ago because it's true. Accidents cost way more than all the prevention you can do, right? Let's be let's not be firefighters, let's be fire prevention, right? So if you can get that mindset dialed in there, then it kind of takes care of itself, and that's the culture you're pushing all the way down.
Most definitely. And actually brings me to the next question. Looking at the industry today, right? And I think the nuclear verdicts is definitely one of those. What do you think are the most pressing issues facing enterprise trucking today? What's keeping you up at night?
um, Nuclear verdicts are always tough. You can't get so caught up into them where it just drives you down every day, right? You got a business to run at the same time. So, but I think that's always forefront. Nuclear verdicts, making sure we're safe, making sure the drivers we just brought into orientation today, they're going to haul, they're going to drive our beautiful green trucks next week, that we trust, that their application, their resume, everything checked off, and we don't know the person, we just brought them in, and we hope we get to know them over the next 3 or 4 days in orientation, and they're driving your 80,000-pound bullet train down the road, is a good person. That's crazy. It's freaking mind blowing if you think about it, right? And we're trusting these people to deliver for America, and that we just met them, right? And so that's kind of crazy, I think, but it's wild to think about that. But the other pieces are just regulations, right? We do a lot of business in and out of California. It's the biggest state on the West Coast, and unfortunately, we can't skip it. And so whether it's CARB or ACT or those things, and just the regulations around the unpractical regulations around having to deploy some of these technologies, or electric trucks or those things, without having the infrastructure ready. And shippers don't really know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with it. At the end of the day, if freight cost is going to go up 25,000 or 25%, then at the end of the day, we're going to spend 25% more on things we're buying, right? So that's on top of my mind right now for sure, is that landscape that's changing. And if it's going to allow opportunities for smaller people, that smaller truckers that want to still come into the business and grow one day, or is it just going to become a big, like an airline industry where it's just a bunch of big 10, 20 carriers, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's funny. I host that radio show that you've been a wonderful part of as well, and I can't tell you how many drivers this you brought up California have told me like, "Oh, just avoid it at all costs." And there's nothing less future proof for a company than
right.
just avoiding a regulation or a situation that's not going anywhere. So I'm happy that you touched on it too. I want to maybe take a step back, actually, being the freight tech nerd that I am. You talked about earlier, right, a little bit of growing the business, right, the invention and promotion of the iPhone, right, and getting the technology behind the business today. Can you tell us about where you've leveraged technology to improve operations for the company, and give examples of maybe where companies should consider looking at their operations today for improvement?
Yeah, totally. So if we just take one step back, as a kid, I remember load boards. We're talking about load boards. I remember the DAT was like a TV guide at truck stops in a corner, like a screen that was running, and you're just reading them. And so I just have that vivid memory of that. And I was going, what the heck is that? And these guys have the notebook. They're writing down, oh, there's a load. And then they're picking up the phone, and then they're faxing things in, right? And to get set up with that broker or whatnot. So I always found that fascinating. And when we got started, fax was still a big deal. And I just met a friend that I've known, since the early days, a couple of days ago, and he was talking about how when he would have, rate confirmations, he worked at a brokerage at the time, which was a very large brokerage. He would print them out if there was a change. He'd go on their, star pickup number, this, and write it down, or must have load logs, write it down, and then fax it to me. And I was like, you know what? It actually worked, because you'd read it and you're like, oh, he wrote this in, and you wouldn't miss it. Now it's like, I sent you an updated tender. It's like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to watch that one digit that changed on this, right? And so some of the new carrier reps and brokerages don't even understand that stuff is still future, like foolproof. I'm still a believer of have your old notepad, write down the things you need to do and cross them off before you're done for the day. And then whatever's left, at least you can write it down for tomorrow's page. So there's no, you can't miss things with that, right? Now there's so many things with our TMSs and our to-do lists and all that. It's like your to-do lists are freaking pages long. Like, how are you going to prioritize things sometimes, right? So, but for technology, I mean, today our trucks, they're like spaceships if you think about it, right? With digital dashes, we use platform science, which we just migrated to for our trucks. As our driver experience, right? It's a tablet. It's we got workflows that are customized to us. It's got automated, geofencing. It's got arrival calls. All those things we're trying to automate as that much as possible. Before that, it was just, hey, this is your pickup number. This is where you're picking up, and people knew like, oh, that shipper's over there. They didn't need the GPS to take them, to that shipper every time. Now a lot of people don't even know how to get places without a GPS, right? So I think that's definitely changed over the years, but the safety technology on the trucks too, right? So the drivers have definitely changed. It's a younger generation. We might be from the same generation, I feel like, but it's always, I was talking to some older folks and they're always like, yeah, the next generation is always doomed. And I was like, yeah, we heard that too. And now we're thinking about the next generation as kind of being like, oh, these guys really don't know, right? But they just evolve with it. So whether it's safety technologies or blind spot monitoring on your trucks or automated braking, right? Those are big things. Cargo sensors, door sensors on your trailers. Like back in the days, it was like we were phoning in yard checks. Like, hey, when you get there, can you do a yard check, right? And our drivers were manually doing them for us. Now we can click a button and see what trailers are where, if they're loaded, if they're empty. That's all evolved big time in this industry, and it's helped. A lot of those things have helped, and a lot of those things have made people lazier, and we forget the basics sometimes, right? Which is at the end of the day, you're just delivering freight from point A to point B or C, and it's like we complicated the hell out of it on how to do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's good. Another good reason why to focus on the safety. I think that kind of brings you down to the what's important, right? Every day is, of course, there is all this technology around us. We're using it to our advantage. We make sure we're focused on the main goal, which is getting things A to B, right, without any problems or hiccups as well. I got a few minutes here left with you. I want to focus a little bit more on the future. When you're, looking at the company, where do you see not only company but trucking industry trends going over the next few years when it comes to maybe more alternative fuels or even autonomous technology as well?
So I think the industry is getting more expensive, right? Whether it's autonomous fuels or that technology, right? Shippers are talking to other providers that are able to provide those green goals for some of those big corporations, even if they cost a little bit more, right? So that's telling you that you got to be able to play with the big guys there, right? And so if I think the industry is going to change to being about serious truckers. If they're really serious about scaling and growing, even if they're smaller, they still got to be able to participate with the big guys, right? And so I think there's going to be more consolidation still. I think the industry is going to get more expensive. Equipment costs are continuing to rise. At the end of the day, I think our costs for stuff we're buying is going to continue to go up. But the one message I have is I think it's going to become a game for serious truckers and even brokers, right? Became so crazy over the COVID years. There's so many new entrants, and now they're like, oh, it's like, oh, what? This is normal, right? This is
Yeah.
what it was the whole time. You were living in freight heaven, and had no idea how brokers really worked, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's going to be a game for the serious players. And I think maybe entries might get a little bit harder, or people will start rethinking it after this downturn. Or we can
Yeah.
just
I
have
love
short trucker brain and just do it all over again in a couple of years.
I do like how you put that because I do agree. I think with especially like the way to have so many offerings, the way to like leverage technology to provide like how you have your brokerage experience and being able to create maybe a bigger value, not just as like a trucker, but even as a brokerage. It's no longer about like I think slinging freight for a few $100s here and there, right? It's a what can you actually add to the service of these shippers that need your help. So I agree with all of it as well, and happy to see that you're focused on the future too. And before I let you go, if anyone wants to learn more about your leadership, the work that you're doing, where can they reach out to Cheema and learn more about it?
Yeah, check us out online, teamcheema.com. Check out our LinkedIn or Facebook. We're very active. We've got podcasts going for our drivers. We've got all those things going on. So we're always talking about our company. We're always, getting the word out there. So check us out on YouTube, Facebook, all the platforms.
Well, thank you so much, Harman, for joining me today. For our audience, this is just the beginning. So enjoy the rest of the event as well and continue to stick with us after this.